So from my perspective, I think if there was an all-good, all-powerful God, it would have created a world where every single person essentially gets their own universe and they can do whatever they want with it. You can still have free will and suffering and evil. You just aren't forced involuntarily into any position that you don't voluntarily choose to be a part of. And that seems to me the only world that an all-good, all-powerful God could create. Anything else is just, by definition, slavery. So because we don't each have our own universe that we can choose to be a part of, and we're forced against our will to be a part of this world, it means that God must necessarily be immoral for putting us into this situation.
If you're making a claim about something existing in the world, like if I said I saw a dog, well, then you're going to need evidence not just of something in your head, like your personal testimony, but you're going to need evidence of something in the world, like the dog. So if someone says they saw a dog, it's reasonable to believe they saw a dog because dogs have an implicit empirical evidence in the statement dog. We have their taxonomy, their phylogeny, their bones, their genetic makeup, how to train them, what they're allergic to. All of that is entailed in that idea of a dog, but none of that exists for the word unicorn. Unicorns don't have an implicit empirical basis like that, which makes it not reasonable to believe the testimony of a person who says they saw a unicorn. So the difference is when someone says they saw a dog, you have the combination of their personal testimony that I saw a dog, in addition to the evidence of reality of the empirical background of what dogs are. And that's what makes it reasonable to believe someone if they told you they saw a dog. But that isn't the case for unicorns, because all you have in the case of unicorns is their testimony, I saw a unicorn. And without that empirical basis behind it, it wouldn't be reasonable to trust them. So until they can provide like DNA of the unicorn, or they can show you a place where you can go pet and touch the unicorn and see it yourself.
Where atheist societies come into existence, where the rationalists gain power, the scientific types gain power, there usually tends to be widespread slaughter. So maybe that ethic isn't adaptive.
Well, let me ask you about that, because is there widespread slaughter in Iceland, Sweden, Norway, Germany, Denmark, any of the places, Japan, any of the places that have majority atheists? Like, where is the widespread slaughter where they're all atheists?
Well,
the microevolution causes the DNA to change, and there's the new child can have a better survivability, and then that new child can have microevolution, which causes its genetics change, and that its child can have better survivability. And we keep adding survivability, then the child that's like 1 trillion down the line will have a whole lot more survivability than the first child. So much so that it could possibly explain all the different species of life, because they all have different levels of survivability.
That's a fairy tale, but you're welcome to believe it. That's not what we see. What we see is cows produce cows, and you get varieties that happen. You get cows that give more milk, cows that have more beef, cows that can run faster, but you're never going to get a cow with a jet engine that can travel around the world in 24 minutes. You're not going to happen. There are limits. Yes, there are variations that happen, but there are limits to the variation, and they have to already be in the gene code.
I agree completely. So as far as I know, the limits on evolution are, one, it can only create things that are selected for by the environment. It can't break the laws of physics, and it can't break the laws of logic. Those are essentially the limitations. And as far as I can tell, again, all forms of life are just different combinations of ATCG. So if you have one single-celled organism even that can mutate and have a child who has more survivability, and that mutates and have a child to have even more survivability, which we can observe this in fruit flies and butterflies and rats and mice. We see this happening just with microevolution, where some children have more survivability than others. It seems reasonable, since this more survivability is just a different combination of the ATCG, that we can get the entire diversity of life starting from a single cell with just that ATCG and more levels of survivability. Just like counting 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, we can do to 100. We can't do it to 1 trillion, but it's reasonable to believe that we can go with this process to 1 trillion. They seem like to be the exact same thing to me. I don't see the difference.
Miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, the supernatural, UFOs, none of those would be reasonable to believe based purely off of testimony. And in the case of Jesus and the resurrection, all we have is testimony, and not just testimony. Testimony from thousands of years ago in old documents. So based off of just that evidence of testimony, without an empirical basis that miracles can happen at all, then there's no reason to accept that the resurrection actually did occur in any sense.